Hola estudiantes, this video is about the vocabulario from Capítulo 10, Paso 3. These notes are found on pages 21 and 22 of your packet. Primero, los quehaceres, the chores. Cortar el césped, to cut the grass, or we commonly say to mow the lawn. Cuidar al gato, to take care of the cat. Hacer la cama, to make the bed. Lavar la ropa, to wash the clothes. Limpiar la cocina, to clean the kitchen. Pasar la aspiradora, to vacuum. In this scenario, you would be conjugating the verb pasar when you're talking about vacuuming. Planchar la ropa, to iron the clothes. Poner la mesa, to set the table. Sacar la basura, to take out the trash. Trabajar en el jardín, to work in the garden. The next section is about direct object pronouns. This is information that we will be continuing to talk about after spring break, but right now, take these notes as a preview as to what we'll be doing with the topic. What is a direct object pronoun in itself? A direct object pronoun is used to replace the noun that receives the action of the verb. The direct object pronoun options are lo, la, los, and las. They are commonly translated to it or them when they're replacing a noun. You should ask yourself who or what is receiving the action of the verb in order to identify the direct object that needs to be replaced. The direct object pronouns match the gender and number of the noun that they replace in a sentence. Again, your options are lo, la, los, and las. You have a masculine, feminine, singular, and plural option. Where do you place them in a sentence? Direct object pronouns go before the conjugated verb, or they can be attached to the end of the infinitive. This should remind you of the placement when we used reflexive pronouns. So for example, in the sentence, I need the car, the translation of that sentence at a base level would be yo necesito el carro. In this case, you ask yourself, what's being needed? In this case, it's the car. So you're replacing el carro with a direct object pronoun that matches the gender and number of car. Since car is masculine and singular, you would replace it with lo. And as we know, direct object pronouns have to go in front of the verb. So my final translated sentence would be yo lo necesito, and that would mean I need it. We know we're referring to it because lo is matching the gender and number of car. Car would have been something mentioned previously in a sentence, and so therefore I can easily replace it with lo, and my reader or listener would know what I was talking about. He bought the food. Él compró la comida is the translation. But if we wanted to change that to he bought it because the food had been mentioned previously, then I would change it to él la compró, because what is being bought is the food, which is la comida, which is feminine and singular, so I'd replace it with la. They are going to see a movie. Ellos van a ver una película. We ask ourselves, what are they going to see? A movie. That becomes our direct object that's going to be replaced by a pronoun, which is la. And there's two ways to write this sentence because there's an infinitive. I can say ellos van a verla or ellos la van a ver. You'll notice that I placed the direct object pronoun on the end of ver in the first sentence and in front of van, the conjugated verb, in the second sentence. Examples. I need the homework. This is in your notes. So first we need to identify the direct object and ask what's needed. In this case, it's the homework, which in Spanish is la tarea. If I want to replace la tarea with a direct object pronoun, I would select la, since tarea is feminine and singular. I place my direct object pronoun in front of my conjugated verb, so my final sentence with all substitutions possible is yo la necesito, which means I need it, referring to the homework. In my second example that's from my notes, I want to say she wants the apples or she wants them. I need to ask myself what's being wanted. It's the apples. Therefore, the apples is my direct object. The apples translates to las manzanas, so therefore the direct object pronoun I will use to replace las manzanas is just las. I will write my final sentence as ella las quiere. She wants them, which is referring to the apples. So a question you might ask yourself is, what if there's also an indirect object pronoun or a reflexive pronoun? Where do they go? So if there is also an indirect object pronoun or reflexive pronoun, they will go first, which means they will go in front of your direct object pronoun. So for example, to say she brushes her hair, which is a reflexive verb here, she brushes is ella se cepilla. What is she brushing? Her hair, which is el pelo, which will be substituted with lo. So my final translated sentence would be ella se lo cepilla, and that means she brushes it. If I want to say she is going to send me the card, well, in this case, I have an indirect object pronoun because it's being sent to someone. Who's it being sent to? Me. That's my indirect object pronoun. What's being sent? The card, which is la tarjeta, which is replaced with la. So after I've identified what those objects are, I can write my final sentence with all possible substitutions. In this case, it would be ella me la va a mandar. She is going to send it to me, is what that translation would mean. Here is a section that you can include on your notes. It is there, but we're not going to be stressing this as much. This is kind of an above and beyond topic. What if lay or lace, the indirect object pronouns, are next to lo, la, los, or las? Well, in Spanish, lay and lace cannot be next to lo, la, los, and las. And whenever this happens in Spanish, you would change the lay or lace to say. Here's an example of that. I always give her food. Who's it being given to? Her, which would be represented by lay. What's being given? The food, which is la comida, which we replace with la. We see here we have an issue because we have lay and la being next together, which we said is not possible. So therefore, we would change the lay to say in our final substitution. My final sentence becomes, yo siempre se la doy. I always give it to her. Pretérito. This is what we'll be talking about between now and break. So we'll be stressing the preterite and adding a couple more verbs. In first semester, we learned the preterite and we learned words that indicate the preterite. Here are some of them. Ayer, yesterday. Anteayer, the day before yesterday or 2 days ago. Anoche, last night. Anteanoche, the night before last or 2 nights ago. Esta mañana, this morning. La semana pasada, last week. El sábado pasado, last Saturday. And el año pasado, last year. You can also use other equivalent expressions to indicate the preterite. Some examples with demonstrating our endings. Hablar, which is an AR verb that means to talk, is conjugated in the preterite in the following manner. Hablé, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablastais, hablaron. Note that the accents in the preterite for AR verbs in the preterite are on the yo and el ea usted forms. The verb comer means to eat. The forms in the preterite are comí, comiste, comió, comimos, comistais, and comieron. Note that the accents in this verb are also on the yo and el ea usted forms. Our final example verb is vivir, to live. The forms are viví, viviste, vivió, vivimos, vivistais, and vivieron. Note that ER and IR verbs have the same endings in the preterite. Asking someone if they had a good or bad time. This is a section that we are going to skip, so this information will not be covered on your quiz. You can just cross it off in your packet. Asking someone what they did. You would do this by using the verb hacer, which means to do or to make. Hacer is completely irregular in the preterite. Here are the forms. Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicistais, and hicieron. Some things to note about the verb hacer. It has an irregular stem in all forms of conjugation. Hacer doesn't have any accent in the preterite. And in the el ea usted form, the C that you've used in the other forms changes to a Z. Here are some questions using hacer. ¿Qué hiciste anoche? What did you do last night? Yo estudié en mi cuarto would be an example answer. I studied in my room. Note, you do not need to use hacer in the answer of your question. ¿Qué hizo Martín ayer? What did Martin do yesterday? Martín practicó el béisbol ayer. Martín practiced baseball yesterday. So again, you don't have to use hacer in your response if it's in the question. Telling someone where you went. This is something that you need to add to your packet. It is not previously written. You would use your space below hacer or in the space where we said you didn't have to take notes just above to write the forms of ir. The verb ir means to go, and ir, like hacer, is completely irregular in the preterite. Here are the forms. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, and fueron. As I noted before, ir is completely irregular in the preterite, and it does not have any accents. To summarize the content in this video and on your vocab list, for this unit, you will need to know the chores vocabulary, how to use direct objects pronouns in sentences, how to use direct object pronouns with indirect object pronouns as well as reflexives, and how to use the preterite, including the verbs hacer and ir. This is the end of the video. You can continue to work on the practice activities posted by your teacher.